Hello there. Hope you're doing really, really well wherever you are. Daniel here, of course, and this is going to be a reply to four people that have contacted me, and a little bit of an unusual episode because 3 out of 4 have concerns about these very rare, extremely rare conditions known as fatal insomnias, which is so unfortunate. I really, truly wish they would have been called something else, something like fatal ataxia or something like that, or fatal degenerative neurogenic, I don't know, something of that nature. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. As I like to point out, sometimes nothing here is medical advice to anyone, just me sharing some thoughts here. So actually, let's start with a comment from Joe from Indonesia. And sorry, I said the same thing again. Joe from Malaysia, not Indonesia, Malaysia. Sorry about that. And so this is a comment to episode 36 where I talked about Joe having had some trouble sleeping related to his neighbors, and I misunderstood. I thought that pardon me, I need to clear my throat again here. I thought that Joe had problems because problems because he was woken up by his neighbors who were noisy. And by the way, Joe has been talking to his neighbors, but that didn't really help anything. But it was a little bit different. So let's read this comment from 2 days ago. Hi Daniel, thank you for the thoughtful reply regarding my situation. After listening to your reply, I realized that I didn't describe my situation clearly. Regarding the noisy neighbors, I find that most of the time the noise wakes me up just as I'm about to drift off to sleep, as opposed to waking me up after I've been asleep for some time. My current solution is to get a white noise machine from Amazon and see if that would fix the problem. I tried earplugs before but didn't like them. So we'll see how that goes, and if you have any more advice for me, please let me know. Anyway, have a good weekend. Thanks for this comment, Joe. And you know what? I realized maybe I should have just written the comment reply to you, but I felt like I do want to comment on this a little bit. Meaning, firstly, I think in your situation, now I know why I wouldn't talk about this. Now I remember, because you're saying you're getting a white noise machine from Amazon, and you know what? In your situation is a little bit unique. A lot of people have trouble sleeping, don't really know why, and trying this and that, and including trying meditation sounds and rain sounds and white noise machines and things like that. And for most people, they're not a problem. They're not a solution. Because they can't produce sleep. They are very. If somebody has kind of milder issues, then they can help by simply distracting. Like you're listening to something, it distracts your thoughts, and that helps. But if you have a little bit more significant insomnia, they are not a solution. But your situation is different. So that's just something I thought about. I think for you it makes perfect sense to get a white noise machine. I guess any noise that drowns out that noise from your neighbors could be helpful. I believe that. And I also wanted to just share what I feel is by the way, I have no data at all to back this up with. I should look into this, but I feel like when somebody has more of the, I have trouble falling asleep, but once I have fallen asleep, I do well. I feel that that's a little bit easier to get around than people that have both, or wake up and they can't fall back asleep. And now, and part of that is because if somebody, I see somebody in clinic, let's say, and they're like, I just can't fall asleep, but once I've fallen asleep, I'm good. Then an often kind of simple solution is to say, well, how long does it take you to fall asleep? Oh, it takes me an hour. Then I go, well, try this. Just go to bed an hour later for now. And then if you fall asleep quickly and you sleep until your typical wake up time, then you can see, if you feel pretty refreshed and feel good, then maybe you should go to bed an hour later permanently. Maybe you don't need as much sleep as you thought, or maybe if you didn't get enough sleep, then you'll be sleepier earlier, and things will kind of regularize itself like that. So that was, now that I'm reading and thinking, that was the other thought I had to you, Joe, was depending on the situation, if this is applicable or not, it's completely if this is applicable to you or not, but maybe going to bed later for now. Meaning, if you delay your bedtime half an hour, something like that, then you would be more sleepy when you went to bed, and you could maybe fall asleep despite the noise from your neighbors. And if you can fall asleep despite the noise from your neighbors, maybe that would just give you like a little sleep confidence, like boost your confidence a little bit. Like even though the noise is still there, maybe knowing that, well, yesterday I fell asleep despite the noise pretty quickly, then maybe that will help. So just a few things there. Hope you do well, Joe. Stay in touch. And with that, we shall move on. Let's do this one first, a quick one. This is from Jay, and this is the first one out of 3 that have kind of like similar concerns. So Jay, I've talked a lot to Jay lately, and so if you browse the past couple of episodes, you will hear things that Jay has contributed here. So just another one here from Friday, and I think he wrote the following. Thanks. I've seen the latest video. I was wondering, it felt like I had neurological issues before the insomnia, but in the video you're saying it's a neurological disorder. Do you think the neurological issues would stay? Not asking for advice here. And so to contextualize this, Jay is one of several people today who's worried about these extremely rare conditions known as fatal familial insomnia or sporadic fatal insomnia. And I like to point out that I don't think there is a single expert out there. Well, maybe there are experts in the sense that there's academic experts, like people who really study this, but clinically, like somebody who's actually seen many people with this condition, no, I doubt that there's a doctor that's seen more than 2 cases or even 1 case in their lifetime. Because, I mean, just to give you a picture, the last time I reviewed this, which was maybe a couple of months ago, I read that there had been like 30 cases worldwide ever in the history of mankind confirmed of like fatal sporadic insomnia. And we'll talk more about this in a second, but just to point out how rare that is. And now, so based on the fact that there's literature, I believe there's very few experts on this. What I say here is what I've read from case series, case reports, etc. And what is clear to me, or like what I feel reading this, is that these conditions are prion diseases, similar to like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease. They are progressive, degenerating neurological disorders. Sleep is affected, but not in the sense that it's never described that this person had like this terrible insomnia, couldn't fall asleep, tried everything, but rather as something that is noted in the history, that somebody has this like obvious neurological condition symptoms. Let's say somebody like just can't walk, can't express themselves, like doesn't make sense when they talk, or they have balance problems. They can't point, like they're trying to grab something and they just like they completely miss it. Something like that. Something obviously neurological is like kind of the presenting problem. And then when you get a history and somebody asks, well, have you been sleeping less or anything affect your sleep? And then it's noted that yes, this person actually has been sleeping less, but not like as in insomnia, like oh my gosh, I can't sleep, but rather just sleeping less. Just kind of again that objective thing that this person is sleeping less than they did before, but not necessarily like I can't sleep, it's a problem. So what I've said many times, and this is, by the way, this is just my interpretation of what's out there, is if somebody like if somebody has Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, symptoms are oftentimes, at least at the time of diagnosis, very obvious to somebody. It's like an outside observer, and there's no question that there's something wrong neurologically. So I feel if there's nothing wrong, if somebody doesn't have like an obvious neurological problem, then I wouldn't worry. Like I personally would not even consider fatal familial insomnia. That would like not at all. And on the flip side, if somebody was really worried about their sleep, then to me that signals that it's not fatal insomnia, because again, it didn't start with sleep issues and there are obvious neurological problems. So if sleep is the main concern, I would not say that. But anyway, we will talk more about that in a second. But to answer you, Jay, here, My interpretation definitely is that, or I think that I can say that without saying it's my interpretation. The literature is clear on that one, that yes, neurological symptoms are obvious and progressive. Then they become worse and worse. They don't go away. So that was to Jay. And now let's move ahead here to an email that came in 3 days ago, and this is from Katelyn. So let me read this. Hi, hello Daniel. I stumbled upon your videos as I was looking for answers to my insomnia problems on YouTube. Great channels and videos, by the way. Thank you, Katelyn, for the encouragement. Over the past month, I have been having issues with insomnia that have increased as the month has gone on. It started on June 14th with a case of middle insomnia, where I woke up in the middle of the night and had a difficult time going back to sleep. This continued each night for the next few weeks. Over the past week, I have been experiencing what I can perceive as very little to no sleep whatsoever. I generally lay in bed and try to be very still, waiting to fall asleep. It feels like I am not sleeping at all, and I'm very aware of what is happening throughout the night, that is outside noises, etc. I usually get up in the morning feeling somewhat fatigued but fairly alert. I'm not having any issues with slurred speech or walking problems, and I feel like I'm fairly present cognitively. I have, however, had a decrease in appetite since this whole insomnia episode began, as well as an increase in resting heart rate, which I know can be early symptoms of fatal familial insomnia. I find myself feeling tired during the day, but still able to perform the majority of routine tasks just fine, which I feel like I would not be able to do if I was averaging no sleep whatsoever over the past 7 days. I'm also having very vivid dreams at night, which leads me to believe that I am entering into some phase of sleep. I have, unfortunately, stumbled upon a lot of information about fatal familial insomnia as I search for an answer to this. I'm trying to rule this out as an issue, but I'm fairly afraid, as it seems like I'm getting progressively worsening insomnia to the point of not sleeping. There's no history of fatal familial insomnia in my family on either side, at least several generations back. That is all the information that I have access to. I'm only 26, and I know that this usually is a late blooming disease. Do you know if I would be having other neurological symptoms after only 1 month, such as signs of dementia or issues with walking, or would that be something that is usually present later in the disease progression? Are there any other telltale signs that I should be looking out for? I'm going to undergo a sleep study in October, but I'm pretty concerned about this issue and wanted to reach out to you first and see if you had an insight to share. Sorry if this inquiry seems far-fetched, as I know this is an extremely rare disease. I've just never had an issue with insomnia my entire life, and I'm really distraught over this entire experience of not sleeping well and maybe at all. So, a couple of things. First, I think, let's try to answer this question of, do you know if I would have other neurological symptoms after only 1 month? As mentioned, like when I read case reports on this, the presenting problem has always been a neurological one. That's like the first thing that is brought to somebody's attention. And I believe that again is because all of these people that have a fatal insomnia sleep less. It is not something they recognize as a problem. It's kind of like they just objectively are sleeping less, but it's not. Again, they're not trying to sleep more. They're not worried about not sleeping. It's just like, oh, I'm sleeping less, something like that. And again, the neurological problems are obvious, and those are kind of the main presenting thing. So my interpretation is that in the absence of like an obvious, and when I say obvious, I'm a lot of people then say, well, I've been forgetting words and I have a hard time remembering things, and I noticed that if I try to walk on a straight line, I may fall a little bit to one side or the other. When I say obvious, in my mind, I'm thinking something like, if somebody asked a friend, like, have you noticed anything that's wrong with me? Like, and if your friend, family members, and things like that cannot notice anything obviously neurological, then I think that is super, super reassuring. Now, you say there's no history of fatal familial insomnia in my family. I think that is that basically, to, again, like nothing here is medical advice. Everybody has to talk to your doctor when you're concerned, as you have done, which is great. But my understanding of this is that fatal familial insomnia is a familial condition. Like if you don't have family history, that's not what you have. But then there's this other thing called sporadic fatal insomnia, which is even more rare, where you don't have family history and it's like a spontaneous mutation of some sort. But again, fatal familial insomnia, FFI, you would not have without a family history. So now, going back here, reading the first paragraph. Over the past month, I've had a middle insomnia. It's been becoming worse. I've had little to no sleep. This is one of those where, like, this sounds like from the inside perspective, from somebody who goes from like sleeping pretty good to like suddenly like literally like feeling like you don't get any sleep at all, and you don't even know if you're asleep or not, and you just have to kind of deduce that you slept based on the fact that you had dreams. The whole thing seems like super bizarre. But from somebody that is, takes care of a lot of people with insomnia, you've heard this story many, many, many times over. Everybody's history is a little bit unique, a little bit special, but there's nothing I read here that I haven't heard many times. And I think what this sounds very much like is something called paradoxical insomnia. You probably already come across that, but paradoxical insomnia is when there is a very significant misperception in terms of like how much you actually sleep, objectively sleep, and how much you perceive sleeping. In the kind of extreme case, you talk to somebody that's like, pardon me again, somebody that says, I haven't slept at all, not a wink for 3 months, like I haven't slept at all, to the more common case where somebody's like, I think I sleep 1.5 to 2 hours per night, or I think I sleep like 3 hours per night, when in reality they sleep, 4.5 hours or like something like that, And that is driven by hyperarousal, which is, in my opinion, pretty much 99.8% of all insomnia is driven by hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is that state when your mind is kind of like racing, like you're hyper alert, everything that's going on around you. You're super aware of your surroundings, and in your mind is all, on this turbo mode. And sometimes there is like sometimes people have like severe anxiety, and that's kind of driving the hyperarousal. But oftentimes with insomnia, it's like the insomnia itself has become the fuel that drives the hyperarousal. And typically what happens is, you have, sleeping okay, and you may have some little bit of insomnia here and there until something triggers it, and then you have like a couple of sleepless nights, and then you identify that as a problem. You're like, oh, I can't sleep. I'm not sleeping. This is a problem. And part of your brain goes into this like kind of fight or flight mode, survival mode. Like I'm looking for another word as well here, which is a threat. Yeah, a threat. Like your brain perceives the lack of sleep as a threat. And is like, and when there's a threat to your health, we are of course looking for a solution. And then people try to go to bed earlier, try to sleep mask, try this and that, and then nothing helps. And then it's like the threat becomes an even bigger one because nothing works. And then the hyperarousal becomes stronger, and then you sleep even less, and you perceive sleeping even less because your mind is like so revved up that even sleep doesn't feel like sleep. And so that's kind of describes paradoxical insomnia there. And by the way, paradoxical insomnia is kind of not to get too technical here, but the two types of insomnia that I talk about are called psychophysiological, when it's like, something triggered it, and then the fear of not sleeping and the attempts at sleeping more drives it. And then paradoxical insomnia, which is more like these big discrepancy between how much you sleep and how much you think you sleep. But in reality, they're both mixed. Like almost everyone has parts of both. But anyway, hope this was helpful. So again, I hope this helped Katelyn, and comment on this episode. Let me know if you have any more questions. More than happy to make a reply. And that brings us to the last the last thing we're going to talk about today, which is a comment on Insomnia Insight number 228 from Karl. And so let's read that. Hi, Daniel. I've been sleeping very lightly for an hour or two at a time for the past couple of months. Over the past year or so, I've been getting very poor sleep in general due to mysterious muscular pain that no doctor has been able to pinpoint the cause of. I've been told it's anxiety. The problem is, for the past couple of months, I've been getting nights where I have literally been able to fall asleep. The following day, I'd be a complete wreck, and then on that night, I'd be able to sleep 2 hours, wake up, sleep for another hour or so, and then the pattern repeats. That is until last Thursday. I haven't slept since Thursday. By the way, this came in 2 days ago today, so that would be Saturday. I'm getting panic attacks and sweating a lot. I feel exhausted, but not sleepy, if that makes any sense at all. Yesterday, I learned about sporadic fatal insomnia, and I'm very worried I might have it, since all the signs and symptoms are there. I live in a very small country, Malta, and only am available to afford public healthcare, which means I must endure waiting lists of up to months to get seen. The last GP I went to on Friday prescribed melatonin medication and a powerful benzo, neither of which have worked. I've also since lost my job due to my sleep issues, which means a whole lot of other problems, seeing as I live alone. If I check myself into the emergency room, I won't get past triage if I tell them I can't sleep. I'm so upset and scared. Days are starting to blend together and I have no sense of yesterday. This is horrible. Well, that clearly comes through in this message, Karl, how much of an issue this has become. And so a couple of things here. We've already talked a lot about sporadic fatal insomnia, I feel, in this episode, so I don't think I need to repeat that. But I want to say this. We've already talked about how hyperarousal really drives insomnia. Hyperarousal is, very closely related to anxiety, which is also anxiety is driven by a threat, something is threatening, something makes you worried. It's our body's way of telling you have to react to something, you have to do something about it, this is a problem, etc. And going back to those things, over the past year or so, I've been getting very poor sleep due to mysterious muscular pain. And, again, it's good that you see a doctor. I don't know you or your situation more, but I want to say this. Something that is very, very common with insomnia is weird symptoms, meaning tinglings, tinglings in certain body parts that may be moving around, discomfort, twitches, abdominal pain, headaches, feeling that you're about to fall asleep and you wake up suddenly, rushes of energy, body jolting, body movements, weird sounds as you're about to sleep, and most of the time, all those things are hyperarousal caused, and they're when you're hyperaroused again, you're so aware of everything that's going on outside you. You're super aware of your surroundings, but you're also super aware of what's going on with you. So things that for somebody that's not hyperaroused wouldn't even be noticeable, like this tingling, this pain, this discomfort. If you're in this hyperaroused state, you notice that big time. And when you notice that, then focus gets, you focus on that. You're like, whoa, this thing is hurting. And then focus goes on there, and in this hyperaroused mind, you're like, this is the problem. You got to do something about it. You got to figure out what's going on. And then the more attention, the stronger that symptom becomes, and the more ingrained it becomes. It's kind of like a micro version of insomnia itself. The more attention insomnia gets, the stronger it gets, the more problematic it becomes. These hyperarousal caused symptoms are like a micro version of insomnia. The more attention they get, the stronger they become, the more you try to do something about it, and the more, et cetera, et cetera. So you said here, I've been told that it's anxiety. Well, if you have maybe hyperarousal, maybe have anxiety, then in light of that, what's been happening for the past couple months and the past few days is just like I said to Katelyn, super bizarre from the inside perspective, but from somebody like that has experience with insomnia, nothing particularly unusual. Um, um, it's something that everybody's unique, and I don't want to belittle the problem. Absolutely not. This is a huge problem, obviously, but it's nothing unusual, and that's important, and that should give everybody hope. Because if when you have if somebody like feels and believes that they have a very, very unusual, special, unique problem, then they will be looking for a very unusual, unique cause, and similarly a kind of a particular rare solution, like a cure or whatnot. But if somebody is like questioning this and like realizing that, wait, other people have had like similar things going on, and in their cases it turned out there was more typical insomnia, and they did better with like the typical treatment, or I wish it was a typical treatment, but the treatment that really is effective, which is cognitive behavioral therapy and other similar techniques. Then if you're open to believing that, and you actually say, well, you know what, maybe this is not a sporadic fatal insomnia, maybe this is paradoxical insomnia or psychophysiological insomnia or more typical insomnia, and you apply the techniques, going to bed later, getting up early, staying active during the day, avoiding naps, and trying, and most importantly, by the way, this is probably the most important for somebody that's like, sleeping extremely little. The most important thing becomes distraction. It becomes doing something else during the day, meeting friends, doing something that you enjoy, have fun, distract thoughts away from the insomnia becomes the most important thing, in my opinion, when you have this like extremely little, extremely like very short sleep. And there was if you want to tune into like what's that episode, pod 33, that's an episode that's basically an email from somebody named Ellen, and she had pretty significant insomnia. I think if you listen to that episode, you will hear me refer to, I think it was actually 13, episode pod 13, but I don't know. But it refers to the original email from Ellen, where you will hear that she went 48 hours without sleeping at all, and although she didn't go into like being concerned about fatal insomnia, but Katelyn, Jay, you two here, Karl, very similar, like minimal sleep for weeks, oftentimes no sleep at all. And turns out that she did really well using the kind of typical effective techniques that I always talk about here, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and other techniques like mindfulness-based techniques and the effortless sleep method by Sasha Steve and things like that. I felt like there was one more thing to say here, but I think that was it. So I want to say a big thanks to Joe, to Jay, to Katelyn, to Karl for sending me these questions, and I have more things I want to talk about, a lot of things I want to talk about, and I might be able to do a video tonight. If not, I shall be back tomorrow. Until then, take it easy. Okay, bye-bye.